Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 448 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is Burn the Boats. Our quote of the day comes to us from Napoleon Hill. Burn the boats as you enter the island, and you will take the island. One of the ways you can support us is by heading on over to thepositivitytribemerch.com. You can find both our Team No Quit and Positivity Tribe apparel, as well as all of our bands. We would love it if you grabbed either a sweatshirt, t-shirt, or one of our bands. It might not seem like much for you, but it means a lot to us and helps us continue to get our brand out there. Thank you. I really enjoyed speaking with today's guest. Matt Schneider opened up about some very important points in his life and how he was able to face that adversity head on and how he wouldn't accept failure as an option. You might want to take some notes. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Matt, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here, man.
Appreciate it. So, first question we ask everybody is if you're ready to positively impact at least one person today.
1,000%. Every day.
So what is 1,000% of 1,000? So we're going to impact at least 1,000 people on today's episode. So our name, No Quit Living, our whole objective is to inspire our listeners to never quit and never give up on themselves. So I have to ask you, if you have a no quit story of your own, or perhaps a challenging time where you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Ooh, man, you're jumping right out the gate with the heavy stuff. Who doesn't? Who doesn't have a whole host of that, man? This wacky journey we call life. Nobody comes out unscathed and without plenty of scars and battle wounds along the way. You know, the one that really I think is most prevalent in my life, Chris, of all of them was when I was a young entrepreneur. We started our first business in 2013, my wife and I. First year was pretty easy because we had enough working capital. Second year, things really started to get pretty challenging because we started running out of that working capital. I was a SWAT operator and a U.S. Marshals fugitive task force guy before becoming a entrepreneur. And so very low business acumen, very low understanding of how to, operate a company, scale a company, do anything as an entrepreneur. So I rode the working capital wave as long as I could. And then when we started running out of it, we had to start making some tough decisions in order to make sure that payroll was made and lights stayed on. So we started leveraging the homes that we had worked so hard to acquire. We had a beautiful custom home that the family lived in, which was the first thing to go. I had to sell that because we had previously gone to my wife's father, my father-in-law, and he wrote me a check for $30,000 to pay the eviction notices and the bills that were past due. And it was time that I had to not only pay him back, but I also had to start bringing in other revenue or money, I should say, for the bills. Sold the first home. That put us into our rental house. We had owned that rental home for 8-9 years. And it had been a way of making a little bit of passive income. If we'd still had it today, the house would have been paid for and would be worth quadruple based on how real estate's done in Idaho. But lived in that house for a little while. Then we had to move out of that house because we had to put it on the market and sell it so we could do the same things. And we just found our circumstances little by little eroding to the point to where our life started looking nothing like what it used to. And when I say that, it was me physically. I'd gained about 60 pounds. It was emotionally with the thoughts that I had running through my head. It was the relationship and the marriage that I had with my wife, where we didn't really enjoy each other's company and fought over everything. My son and I, didn't have the kind of father-son relationship I'd always envisioned in my head. And a lot of it and almost entirely, it came down to just the stress around being financially strapped and not having enough money to get us through the month after month. So the point that happened, that to your question, is we moved into a brand new townhome, but it was a townhome nonetheless. Parking was awful. You split a thin wall with a neighbor, and it was so far away from our custom home that we had sold about a year prior to that my son came up to us, or me, I should say, and he was probably 7 or 8 at the time. And he walked up and he said, I'm standing in the kitchen. He says, Dad, I don't feel like we have a home. Like, I don't feel like I have a home anymore. And, Chris, coming from a background where my biological father was an abusive alcoholic drunk, and my mom had poor decisions into the men that she would date and marry, I was a product of having restarts my entire childhood. And I swore many years ago, before I ever became a parent, that I would never put my kids through that. I didn't know how many I'd have, but I swore we would never do that. And here I was standing in the kitchen hearing from my son that he didn't feel like he had a home. And all of a sudden I felt like that person I swore I would never be, that father I would never be, and that husband I would never be, I was becoming that person. I'm so thankful for that moment, though, because I found myself realizing that is what created a absolute rage in my belly and a fire in my eye, and gave me a chip on my shoulder, that I chose to channel in the right ways. And I determined in that moment I was done taking the fake it till you make it route. I was done being a hypocrite. I was done operating in a way to where I had low standards of expectations, allowing myself to be in the wrong circles, allowing other people that were the wrong people to be in my circle. And I was just done. We were circling the toilet bowl in our marriage. We were on the verge of bankruptcy, and I had nowhere to go but up. And that was the catalyst to where we're at today, which is a very, very different place.
I truly appreciate your candor and sharing that. I have to go back to something you said really stood out to me in that story, how you said that you were grateful for that moment with your son. And I think, to me, the parallel I draw is the concept and the idea, and I think you'll agree with this, but people look at failure as the end point. And Zig Ziglar has an awesome quote where he says, failure is an event, not a person. And to me, I define failure as if you give up or if you quit, not if you miss something or you have to downsize or you lose a business or something like that. But it's that moment after where you have this choice to make and say, okay, am I going to give up? Is this the end for me? So I know maybe a tough question, but from that moment, maybe it's a challenging question, but what was the runway until you made it close to the place where you are today? Was it a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? I'm curious what that would be.
Yeah. So, I had a lot of work to do, a lot of repairing to do. But what I knew I needed to do based on, my days in SWAT and special operations was I needed to prioritize and execute. I needed to figure out what my priorities were. I needed to stack them in order, highest priority first, and then I just needed to start executing on those things. I knew that of all of the anxiety and feelings I was having, the only way to start dealing with it was to start taking massive action and to lean into that action and to do the work that I knew it was going to take in order to start building momentum. And once I started to have momentum, to smash on the gas even further, and at no point to allow myself to make a promise to myself or to anyone else that I was unwilling to keep. So I developed some core values. One of them is to burn the boats, and that, to your point about the end point, versus the event and the quitting deal, is burning the boats is adopting this mindset that failure is not an option. We are going to have setbacks. We're going to have, turbulent times. We're going to have, times where for one reason or another, we're going to get smacked across the face by something we had no idea was there. And it's going to sneak up on us and it's going to throw us on our ass. And we're going to find ourselves dazed and confused, wondering what the hell happened. And we've got to get up and we've got to keep going. Right. And so burn the boats means that under no circumstance will the objective not get met. It is a victory or death mindset. And that's one of the things that I adopted right away was some core values, burning the boats being one of them. I adopted the fact that I no longer wanted to get a lot of things that I was experiencing. And in order to no longer get those things anymore, I could no longer accept the behaviors, the people, the circumstances that was facilitating those things being part of my life and my family's life. So I had to make some decisions about editing relationships and creating some distances and deleting some relationships altogether. And it just became a game of inches, dude. It became a matter of just stacking more wins on a daily basis than losses. And those days turned into weeks, months, and those months have turned into years. And what I found is that resilience, and it's interesting because I did a post on this earlier on my Instagram, that resilience is the key. It's those who are resilient and are willing to, stand up, accept responsibility, assess the situation, lick the wounds, and then get back to work, are the ones that thrive in life, though, because they will not be stopped, right? And setbacks will not dictate their future. And so I started hanging out with more people like that, more people that thought like that, operated that way. And I realized right out the gate, like, dude, I got to earn my seat at the table here. Like, these people don't just accept anybody into their circle. I got to earn my way into their circle. So I started paying attention to what their behaviors were and what was the things that they were accepting versus not accepting. And success leaves clues. I started to follow those clues. So it's been an evolution. It took me about a few months, I would say, to start earning trust back with myself, because I had such a long track record of making promises and commitments to myself and to other people that I wouldn't keep, that I wasn't even taking myself seriously. Right. You and I were talking before this call started about, the 75 hard and how we're doing 76 harder, because we're doing one more of everything. It's 46 minutes instead of 45, 11 pages instead of 10. Andy Priscilla, don't sue me. And so it's, but yeah, people like start this thing and they'll make excuses about how, okay, I didn't quite get this done. I didn't do that, but I'm still going to continue forward. I'm still going to check that box or say that I completed it. Man, when people do that, they know they didn't do the thing. And they are doing nothing more than just eroding the trust and confidence and credibility within themselves. And that's when people know internally they're a fraud and they are not to be taken seriously. And if you don't take yourself seriously, don't expect other people to. So that's one thing I learned pretty quickly, and then just started like building upon that as I went.
We can almost stop the podcast because you just shared some awesome value bombs. So I hope our listeners are taking notes. I know I sure am. But the last thing you said about the fraud and reminds me of something that David Goggins has become famous for, which is that self-accountability mirror. And I think the reality is, if you and I were hanging out and we were doing 75 or 76 harder together, I might be able to tell you, hey, Matt, yeah, I got it done, like finish the second one. And maybe you'll believe me, maybe you won't. But if we're friends, hopefully you will. But when I go to brush my teeth that night or the next morning and I look in the mirror, I know that person I'm looking back at just lied to you when I said, yeah, Matt, I did it when I didn't do my second workout. And I think, to me, it's so important. But what you said in the regards to promises to yourself, I think is so awesome, because it's so easy for us to, I won't say easy, but we can let other people down on a daily basis by not saying what we're going to do, maybe being late, making excuses, traffic, whatever it is. But eventually you have to begin accepting the fact that you're lying to yourself. And you say, oh, I'm going to do it on Monday. And then Monday comes. I did a post, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. It's like, how many times have we all said we're going to start something on Monday? Well, guess what? Monday is undefeated. There has never been a Monday that has not come after a Sunday. But I know for a fact myself in the past, there are so many things that I've told myself and others, oh, I'm going to do it on Monday. I'm going to start on Monday. And it's easy to say it, but it's not easy to go ahead and do it. It's easy to say, but it's not simple to get up and say, okay, now I'm going to start on Monday. I told Matt, or I told my wife, or I told my friend. And I think that goes back to that self-accountability mirror where, you talked about just following through on your promises to yourself.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah. Motivation is fleeting. People get motivated in the moment, and then the next thing happens and they lack motivation, and now they're no longer doing the thing anymore, right? Even if they did tell themselves they would do it. And I just don't have time for people like that, dude. I don't have time for people who they tell a story, they talk skinny, but they eat fat. And they're not aligned with integrity and authenticity, and nobody likes a hypocrite. And if you're saying one thing and doing something else, you're a hypocrite, and you know it. And when you try to have a conversation with somebody who's not a hypocrite and you can't make eye contact with them, they know you're a hypocrite. And so, people wonder why their life's a mess. They wonder why their marriage is a mess. They wonder why they're not getting that promotion. Their kids don't respect them. They wonder why everybody else seems to be the lucky ones. And dude, just stop talking and start doing and following through with what you say you're going to do. Like that's a conversation I had to have with myself, Chris. And we talk about accountability mirror, like that's the conversation I have with myself. And it wasn't just a conversation. It didn't just stay in that bathroom. Like it left with me and it stayed with me ever since. And it's the outcomes and results just speak for themselves.
Dude, I love talk skinny, eat fat. I've never heard, and I share this on so many podcasts, but when I get the opportunity to interview and connect with like-minded people and people like you, I take a bunch of notes during my podcast. That I do a bunch of preparation, but it's almost like every interview there'll be one or two or three just things that stand out, and that's awesome. Talk skinny but eat fat. I love that. Yeah. So we have a fun question we ask each guest. If I asked you to define yourself, but you could only choose one word, what word would you pick?
Hungry.
You're on day 6 of 75 hard, so you'll be hungrier as you go through. No, if you could expand on why you chose hungry.
Yeah, man, I think as a father and as a husband, a protector, provider, somebody who a long time ago adopted having a CEO mindset with a white belt mentality, 42 years old, doing jiu-jitsu with his wife and son on damn near a daily basis. Hunger is something that has led me to be constantly in pursuit of what's next, and how can I become a better husband? How can I become a better father? How can I become a better leader? How can I provide more, do more, have more, achieve more, donate more? And staying as far away from mediocre, staying as far away from settling as I can possibly get. My intentions have been really clear and really healthy for a number of years now. And with the hunger that I have, and that fire in my belly to achieve and be better today than it was yesterday, with the right intentions, it's been a trait that I really wish more people experience more hunger to be that better version of themselves, not just for themselves, but for the ones that they love and that love them as well.
I love that you just said better today than you were yesterday. That was my post today on social media, and you actually commented on it, which is
probably subconsciously. That's probably where I just got that from.
I'll take full credit for that.
Yeah.
So, are you a reader?
Yes.
So I got to ask. I thought you were, but always preface it. But are you reading anything currently, or perhaps you've read something recently that you'd like to maybe recommend to our listeners?
So yes, Outwitting the Devil is something that I'm reading again for, I think, the 4th time now. That book right there, I think, has the capacity of helping everyone on the planet. at whatever different stage you are. Somehow that book, which was written many, many years ago, decades ago, it has a way of meeting people where they're at in their life. And you know, the thing from that book that I took away from the first time I read it, and I cling on to every day, is the rejection of being a drifter and the dangers of being a drifter. Highly recommend that book.
So I'm curious, you've read it or you're reading it the fourth time. I didn't really understand the idea probably until a few years ago of how and why people reread books. I now reread a bunch of books because I think, to your point, at different points in your life, whether it's personally or professionally, something 2 years ago that really didn't resonate, all of a sudden now you read it and you're like, holy cow. Is that something that you do with other books, or is it just this book in particular that you've reread?
No, I mean, yeah, there's definitely various books that I'll do that with. But they're books when I read it the first time, like Psycho-Cybernetics, for example. I mean, the Five Dysfunctions of a Team. I love Patrick Lencioni's work from a business standpoint, leadership. Like, there's some books where I know as I read it that if I revisit this book later on when I'm in a different unit of time and I'm a different version of myself, because I will be, like, one of the most tragic things I think can ever happen is when somebody 1 year from now looks back and they're virtually the same person they were a year ago. Right. So I know that I will be, in a year from now, I'll be a different version of myself. I'll be a better version of myself, which means that something that right now that's not resonating or landing with me, that I'm kind of just glossing over or I'm not quite computing, I'll come back to, and it will have it'll play different, right? It'll land different, and I'll be better for it. So, really profound books, I will come back to, because I know that there's a lot of lessons in there that I can reapply. And then also, like, I got a bad memory. Like, I gotta reread things that I'm like, oh yeah, like, that's good shit right there. I gotta make sure I keep doing that, right? Like, if you get the why behind some things, or you just kind of go into autopilot, I'm like, oh yeah, that's it. I don't want to drift.
Patrick Lencioni is a fantastic writer. Have you read his book, The Ideal Team Player?
I have. Yep.
Yeah,
I've got all this stuff on the shelf behind me.
It's funny. I mean, it's a few years old, but I had not read it, and I ended up reading it last year. And I was doing some work with one of my clients' business down in Florida, and I literally took like 4 of the specific things that, just to your point, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, not that it wouldn't have been as important or I wouldn't have enjoyed it, but it really hit home where I was working with this specific company, and I was like, wow, I was like, this is awesome. And I gave him full credit, obviously, but it was just one of those things where, to your comment before, it just hit at the exact time. So I know the famous quote by Jim Rohn: "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." If I could offer you or grant you dinner tonight with any 5 people, dead or alive, who would you pick?
Oh man, these questions are, hats off to you with these things, man. Okay, let's see. Kevin Hart is one, for sure. Him and The Rock, right? Those two together are just like hilarious. If there's one thing that I love to do is just bust a gut laughing by incredibly talented, funny people. So those two together. I've always thought, Mother Teresa would be an interesting one, because of asking the questions of, like, how do you dedicate your life, like you're literally your entire life, to one thing, and have that be your identity, and just change the world as a result. I'd love to throw, like, whoever knows, like, what the real deal is about aliens and, like, the government and like, that's like super black ops. I'd love to throw them at the table. I don't know their name, but I'd like that person to be there. Definitely love to understand how much of that is real. And what's that puts us at 4.
No, I just pictured Mother Teresa and that person, her asking, like, well, explain to me aliens. Like, so what does it really mean?
Yeah, dude, I want to have like a really complex conversation. Like I love deep, meaningful conversations. I hate the superficial shit. Um, I don't know. Probably Martin Luther King Jr. I think that like the risk he took, the surety that he had that he would be assassinated, the just unique times of the country, like the um, like who you'd have to be as a person, the kind of character you'd have to have, and the selflessness, um, to have like a conversation with him on what did that feel like, and what did you fear? Like we know, like probably on the level, service level, like what he would fear, right? Being attacked and shot and persecuted and stuff. But like, you know, he had such awesome speeches and created just such a powerful movement. So that'd be the five.
I have to say, of almost 400 episodes now, that is probably one of the most diverse tables, which is awesome. I just can't get the thought idea of Kevin Hart and Mother Teresa just breaking bread together. So
amazing.
it'd be awesome if I could.
To like the original question about like the five people you associate with. I know that Jim Rohn's like, that is not what he meant. Like that is not like. But I'm not thinking about it through that lens of like I'm trying to be like, any other than just like how cool it'd be to break bread with some like just crazy badass, funny, hilarious, world changing people. You know
what the coolest part about that question is, and I have to be fully transparent with you and the audience. It was one of those questions that I wrote probably a couple of years ago where it was coming from, okay, I want this podcast to be successful. What's one of those like questions where it's like people would be like, oh my God, like that's just amazing. And I've gotten some good responses, but now selfishly, I have to say the coolest part about that question is people take it literally one of 1,000 different ways. It's only dead people or family people or a grandfather or great grandparent that they never met. All these things that are personal to each person, but then it's something such as like the first part you said is laughing and having fun. To me, that's the one thing that this pandemic took away from a lot of people initially was like, okay, yes, like it was serious and obviously people got sick and many people passed, but it's like, to me, laughing and smiling is something that we all need to do. And it's not poking fun at somebody or making fun. It could be just something goofy. But the question is so personal to every single person I ask it to, including myself. And I released an episode, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago of my 5 people. I think I had like 22 people on the list. And now I have like 60 people. So my dinner is going to be literally like an entire restaurant. And the challenge for me is like, okay, I get 30 seconds to talk to every person before you go. But again, it's such a fun question. If I could offer you choice between more time or more money, what would you pick?
Okay, before I do that, I want every one of your listeners to tag The Rock and Kevin Hart. Every single one of you tag those 2 people with this episode.
What about
so that way we can get them on the No Quit podcast. And
what about Mother Teresa? We could tag her too.
I think she's on TikTok, dude. I don't know that she's. Can you tag people on TikTok? I'm not on it.
She's actually up with the aliens right now, so maybe she can come back.
Dude. Let's figure that out too. Yeah, whoever knows that answer isn't taggable, but somebody knows.
Somebody knows. We just
money or time. The question is, could I have one or the other? Or
yep.
What's the question?
Like if you could pick, or you had to pick more money or more time, what would you pick?
Dude, time all day. This part of this 76 harder thing that we're doing. Again, Andy, don't sue me. Is the evening walks. Just last night, man, I was telling you before the show started that my wife and I and son doing our second outdoor exercise thing. We have a long walk right along the green belt that we do. It takes about an hour and a half. And there's a section, it's all along the river. And so we take our German Shepherd and she's in there playing and she's got this thing where she loves to bury her head in the water and like come up with big river rocks. And like German Shepherds are smart, but sometimes I think they're not. But our son is like, he's in the river and, cause it's like right now it's about knee high, just a little bit less in some spots. And he's throwing these rocks and she's running around and my wife and her there. And I'm like, dude, this, like we have an abundance of all of the important things, but that was what it was about. Like, give me more of that, that is what ultimately you could take the dollars away from us. The accounts could be drained. The houses could be gone. The businesses could implode. Just give me more time with them.
I think that's awesome. So we're going to switch over to what we call our hot seat questions. And the only request we have of you is that you spit out the first thing that comes to mind.
Let's roll.
Last meal, you can pick absolutely anything. What do you pick?
Oh, Thai food.
Favorite smell?
Favorite smell? The cinnamon candles, fall candles.
Favorite sport?
Jiu-jitsu.
Do you have an all-time favorite team?
No, I don't follow sports like that to have a favorite team. Whoever's winning.
All-time favorite movie?
Step Brothers.
Oh, did we just become best friends?
We sure did.
Favorite book?
I will say Outwitting the Devil because of the impact that it's had on my life, my family's life.
What's the favorite app you use on your phone?
The Ubuntu app, our community app.
Do you have a favorite quote?
It is by Napoleon Hill. Help others get what they want, you will get what you want in return. Something along those lines. I butchered it, but love that one because it's a reminder to be a servant leader, have a servant heart, and if you help others and that's your intention without any expectation, it'll come back. Like don't worry about it. It'll come back.
What's that song, no matter whenever you hear it, if it's 5 a.m, 2 p.m, or 10 o'clock at night, you automatically just turn it up and rock out to it?
Oh, that's going to have to be, let's go with Montel Jordan. This is how we do it.
If you had asked me before, I that is not the song I would have thought that you were going to go ahead and pick. So I have to ask you and want to give you a little plug here because I connected with you from Instagram, and I know you have a bunch of courses out there, some things for couples, a mastermind. Wanted to just ask if you wouldn't mind just sharing that briefly with our listeners. Where's the best way for them to find that information, but also the best way for them to follow you as well?
Yeah, man. So the community is called Ubuntu. It comes from an African proverb that translates into "I am because we are." I've said for a long time that nothing of any significance is ever accomplished alone, and we are tribal people. We are better together, and so Ubuntu is a place where we bring expanders together. It's a couples community. It's a entrepreneurial community. You do not need to be married to be in it. You do not need to be in a relationship. You don't need to be an entrepreneur. But what you do need to be is expanded minded. You need to be somebody who wants to be surrounded by others who dream bigger, do bigger, achieve bigger, accomplish more. And you have to be somebody who wants to be that as well. You don't have to be there yet, but you have to be somebody who wants to get there and is hungry to get there and is willing to do the work to get there and realize that the power of proximity is real. And the Ubuntu community is an in-person and online community where we have 3 pillars: health, wealth, and relationships. Amazing people in it, and everybody is better on a daily basis as a result of it. So that is ignitionmastermind.com is where they can find out more about it. What was the other question? Where they can find me on social? Was that?
Yep.
Matt Schneider _official is where you can find me on Instagram. I believe that's the same one it is on LinkedIn. And I'm on Facebook, but I'm not real heavy on it. That's more like the family deal.
More of the pictures of you walking the dogs and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting question I've been adding before I ask you the last question is there a question or something you wish I asked but I hadn't?
I mean, you didn't ask me about my expertise in making methamphetamine. That seems to be a real heavy hitting question. Not a lot of people have made meth, but I have, Chris.
So if you could quickly tell us about that, because like I asked that question, so you quickly responded. I have to follow up with it.
uh, this just provides a shock and awe factor for your audience because they're going to be tagging Kevin Hart and The Rock here soon,
and Mother Teresa,
and Mother Teresa, of course, on TikTok. I was prior to becoming an entrepreneur, I was in law enforcement, and I did a 1.5-year stint as an undercover narcs detective, and I was also on SWAT. So we got sent to the DEA school in Quantico, Virginia, and we spent a couple weeks learning how to operate in full hazmat kit. Right, so when we do warrants on dope houses, we could fight and shoot and do things with an air tank on our pack and stuff. Well, also what we needed to do is be able to understand what we were looking at when we were inside. And so the very best way that they could train us is to, give all the ingredients, show us how they're made and what to look for, and then to make it. And then if we were able to make it with 97% purity or better, that would give us the ability to really be a subject matter expert in court. So when we went to trials, we could testify that not only did we know what it looked like, but we also knew how to make it, and we have made it. So I've made it twice under the supervision and authority of the DEA, and I'm happy to report that both of them passed as being 97% or better pure.
So I'll add now, if anybody also wants to tag Bryan Cranston or Breaking Bad, I think we could get that as well. So before I ask you,
Idaho too. He's local here.
Is he really?
Yeah. Tag him also.
So before I ask you last question, just again for our listeners, you have to tag 4 people. It's Kevin Hart, The Rock, Mother Teresa on TikTok, and Bryan Cranston on all social media platforms. But last question I have for you is the same question I have for everybody, is if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you this. Life is peaks and valleys. There's no escaping it. We will always get the things that we accept in life. And if you have low standards of expectations of yourself and others, if you make promises that you don't keep, if you are not a man or woman of your word, you are going to burn credibility within yourself and integrity within yourself. And that's just a recipe for disaster. If you're finding yourself in a place where you don't want to be, if you're finding yourself in a place where you're capable of more, you can achieve more, do more, you're worth more, you're not living out your life's purpose, and there's just opportunity and important things you're leaving on the table, do not forget you always maintain the power and the control to change your circumstances. Just get into the driver's seat of your own life, pick up the pen and author your own destiny. Do not be a spectator. Take accountability and responsibility for the realities of your life and understand that you've probably been doing some shit you shouldn't be and has led to outcomes you don't like. And so start to fix it. Edit relationships, delete relationships. You got to get healthy first with yourself before you can start to go and have impact on the world. But if you're in a place financially, emotionally, relationally that you don't like, you got the power and the control to fix it. You just got to do the work, and you got to do the work for a long time consistently, and you got to be resilient in the process. But the outcomes on the other side are incredible, and they're there waiting for you as long as you're willing to do it. And there are other people, Chris, that will get behind, in front, and around others that are willing to do the work and are doing the work, as long as they prove that they're willing to stand on their own 2 feet. They're not going to talk skinny but eat fat. They're going to put in the hours and the sweat and the emotion and everything required. People will rally around you, and that proximity is very, very powerful in getting really big things done.
I think that's a fantastic way to end today's episode. I truly, truly appreciate your time. I really enjoyed the conversation. And again, for our listeners, tag The Rock, Kevin Hart, Mother Teresa on TikTok and Bryan
If
Cranston.
anybody does know, whoever's got the answer to the aliens, tag that person too. Like, let's just, if you know, throw a tag. Secret safe with us, but we all want to know.
And I'm sure they're on probably on Instagram too, just hanging around too. Probably.
Oh, they're listening. Oh yeah, right now they're listening. They're tuning in. Yeah, we're gonna figure this thing out together, Chris.
Well, listen, I appreciate your time, and I know that we will speak again soon. And thank you for jumping on here. Thank you for listening to episode number 448. Matt touched upon some key points: prioritize and execute, standards, core values, and burning the boats. I hope what he shared today made as much as an impact on you as it did for me. In his parting words, Matt mentioned how life is full of peaks and valleys, and that we will eventually get what we set as our standards. So my challenge to you today comes in the form of a question. What are the standards you set for yourself, and do you hold yourself accountable to those standards? And remember, we rise by lifting others up. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.